I was stretching my leg muscles yesterday evening before my daily run, leaning on the fence post at the foot of the presbytery driveway, when I saw approaching along the pavement a boy about 12 years old, dressed as I was in a tracksuit. Only, crucial detail this, he had his hood pulled up, needlessly in the sunshine, expressing in this way what I can only describe as attitude. I looked at him and he looked at me, and it was clear to both of us that neither liked the other. And then I remembered that I'd left the upstairs window of the presbytery open, so I turned to check, and indeed the house was vulnerable, and then turned back, and there was the boy now very close to me. Be like Don Bosco, I thought, the apostle to the young. So I said, "Hi." He just glared at me, unconvinced by my faux jollity, and then, angling his head slightly, he spat expertly, his gob landing on the pavement between us, just outside the boundaries of the presbytery land. "I don't know you, so why should you say hi to me?" he said, as I retreated to close the window and he continued down the road, a tight ball of anger, turning back at one point to shout something further in my direction. Once he and a mate cycled past me on the same stretch of road just outside the presbytery, and he shouted the foulest abuse that he could think of in relation to Jesus. On another occasion, not so long ago, he and a mate, perhaps the same one, I don't know, it's difficult to tell when they've got their hoods pulled up, passed by, and seeing my watching them, he proceeded to kick over the presbytery waste bin, which was in the street, ready for collection the following day, spreading garbage on the grass verge. And then they cycled on, their odd alliance cemented by their having gleefully jumped over another boundary of what is considered acceptable behaviour. Something the recently appointed executive head teacher of our primary schools, Mr. Lavin, said at a recent governors' meeting has stuck in my mind. It's never the child's fault. It's a great watchword. Some unhappy circumstance has made this lad how he is at the moment, and he's very evidently hurting inside. He sees the church as somehow representing what he wants to kick against. I know where his family lives, and I know that their situation is a complex one. I thought of him when I got chatting to a chap in his 60s at a social event at the Sandale Community Trust on the Buttershaw estate not so long ago. He told me that he had been a complete tearaway as a lad, such that he had had to move out of the area and attend what I think in those days was described as a reform school. He recalled ruefully the scrapes he had got into, but now, all these years later, it was evident that he had made something of his life and that he was proud of that after a rather stuttering start. I felt grateful that he should share with me something of his personal history, and he, I think, was similarly grateful that I should listen. There we were, two middle-aged men enjoying a pleasant social gathering, communing over carrot cake. Having cups of tea with people, being present to them, that's at the heart of being a disciple of Jesus Christ in our culture. We all have a deep need for people to demonstrate their esteem for us. And sometimes, in the course of this, in ways which it is impossible properly to chart, a person thinks, what if I were to join this gang of Christians? Or what if I were to become a follower of Jesus? Or what if I were to go to church on a Sunday? Or perhaps more usually, what if I were to volunteer to help this particular parish in some way, on the clear understanding that I'll do this and nothing more, and no priest try as he might is going to get me to engage more fully, and any priest who thinks he could do so is going to be sorely disappointed and needs to get a life. This process of gradual engagement is so mysterious because God is the one making it happen. In today's first reading, St. Paul joyfully reports back to the Christians in Antioch all the different ways in which, as he said, God had opened the door of faith to the pagans. The image of the door is so evocative. I remember telling an RCIA class about how Moses had instructed the Jews to daub the lintels and the doorposts of their doors with the blood of the lamb so that the angel of death should pass over them, and though I say so myself, they were transfixed. When I think of doors in the context of faith, I can picture exactly the exterior of the door of the Catholic Church in Burley and Wharfdale, where I grew up. And Sister Madeline, who told us no Catholic should ever pass a church without going in and praying before the Blessed Sacrament. And so I followed her advice and did as she said. It felt amazing to be in the sacred interior alone as a lad, to have time to gaze upon the variegated light from the stained glass windows spread out across the floor, to smell the fresh polish, the flowers, the continuing faint scent of incense, to kneel in prayer for a few moments, experiencing intimacy with Jesus, whose heart was at that moment burning in love for me, expressed by the flickering sanctuary light by the side of the tabernacle, and to see in the chapel dedicated to her the statue of Our Lady, arms extended towards me, assuring me of her ongoing maternal solicitude for me. These moments were so important for me that I opened the church at St Winifred shortly after I arrived, not least because Pope Francis was urging us to do so. The footfall increased the more people knew that this facility was now available. Candles were lit in increasing quantity before the lady statue, and little by little some boys started to pop in, including, if I remember rightly, a younger version of the lad whose spittle landed so near my shoe the other evening. As I got to know them slightly, I taught them a little bit about our faith, using the interior of the chapel as a catechetical aid. They didn't know any prayers. They were proper modern mini-pagans. One evening, when I was locking up the church, I noticed that something seemed different. Then I noticed the Paschal candle was missing. 2 altar candles had been smashed, leaving just stumps in the stands. The confession grill had been torn away, and several of the 12 wall-mounted candle sconces had been ripped from their places. I went outside, and in the dying light I followed a trail of candles and bits of brass across the back field behind the church into the neighbouring estate. The following day, 2 of the boys appeared outside the church, perched on bikes, nervously, looking 2 parts giddy to 1 part guilty, ready for a quick escape. What would Don Bosco do in these circumstances, I thought?